So let's talk about saving marriages.
What I do is I give him a relationship test. I said, okay, how's your husband open in communication? Zero. Resolving conflicts, one. Intimacy, closeness, one. Overall satisfaction, two. I said, okay. What are the things he likes? They'll say, so how much do you hate him doing? Oh, I hate it because he's giving them attention and not me. I said, okay. How about you give him the peace that he needs because of his pain and you suspend some of your emotions for a short time. And if it doesn't work, go back to your way. I told the mom yesterday, I don't want you to give your son advice for the next 2 weeks. Zero. You go back to your old way if it doesn't work. This is what we're going to do instead. She had a over 20-year-old son, and she was still treating him like he was 12. So anyways, I said, but you have to be a 10. So 10 in communication, 10 in resolving conflicts, 10, irrespective of what that person does for you. Can you reprogram the body not to be controlled emotionally by that person that you love the most? When you do that, in many cases, it gives the husband the space to now look at their wife differently with appreciation. Because when you're married to arrogance in any form, they'll look at a good woman, they'll think they're bad. So when the woman gives that space for the man to let him be who he is, and in most cases, if she's married a decent person, he'll see that. And then he'll learn to appreciate it. What happens is if we've been hurt, we don't allow ourselves to act like the prophets, right? To try to be like them because we validate it through, well, this person did this to me. Why would I do that? He doesn't deserve it. And I imagine if God was like that for us. A prophet, he would see women who did the worst things. He would give them one word of forgiveness and compassion. They would change. What do we have to lose? That's why we have to be very careful of a lot of stupid advice that counselors are giving, therapists. There's a lot of advice that goes against the principles of Islam.
What happens when one of the parties are willing to make changes, but the other one won't even show up,
Yeah,
for whether it's with a session or counseling or anything?
right. So this is a coffee cup, right? So then you've tried, right? You've done the work, you've done the 90 days. And then you just have to ask yourself a fundamental question. Can I just accept who I have in front of me? Okay, he's going to have this character. I'm not expecting anything else. Because what's happiness is when you have an expectation, you meet it or you exceed it. Okay? You're unhappy with your relationship because your expectation of your husband was here. He hasn't met it, thus you're unhappy. You tried to change your habits, right, to meet him, to become better, and you're here because your habit changed. But can you just lower your expectations of him to be happy? That's it. And if you can, then now you have a happy marriage. So you already know that this person is going to do certain things and behave a certain way, is never going to take his dish off the kitchen, is going to not spend that much time with his kids, or he's going to want to come home and just watch football and not spend too much time to you. Can you just accept that? Why? Because I tell you, okay, what are the good things that he has? And you list them. So, okay, focus on that and don't expect them to change. When you do, sometimes that space also gives them the room to change as well. Because people hate being told what to do, especially men, even women. We don't, you know, even Allah tells us to do things in an indirect way. He shows us through a dream or weird people show up in our life. But listen, the hardest thing in the world is to overcome this body. And the way you could have somebody come to peace with it is you're not a wife. You're not a mother. You're not a daughter. You're none of these things. Because all of these things are transient. That's where faith comes back in and say, okay, this is just my jihad. Right? Some women have to do that with their kids. This is their jihad. They have this issue. Then you just keep struggling until you leave. And as soon as you leave, you're none of these things. You're just this pure consciousness going back to Allah. Nor are you going to carry about this thing. So if I were to ask you about your past, right, and you tell me a very sad story, but then you tell me it happened 10 million years ago, what would you say? It happened 10 million years ago. Why are you worried about it? That's when we die. And then the trumpet is blown, we're all put to sleep, and it's like 100,000 years later. Like, why would you even care about that? And tell me, what is it about 100,000 years ago that was worth your akhirah? To not act godly. Let it be your husband cheated or anything. Why should that take you away from Allah? And how do you know it's taken away when you're no longer optimistic? Nobody knows enough about the future not to be optimistic. If you allowed somebody to rob your optimism, what you could do is use them to get it back. Where you lower your expectation, you're optimistic and happy no matter what they do to you.
But this is why many people do get divorced, is because I've heard someone say, I knew that I had to leave when I felt that I was becoming a pharaoh to my own family, i.e., my own spiritual state is being compromised right now, that I am not actually living up to my own ethics and principles of what it means to be a servant of God, that it's actually better for me to leave so that I can create like a peaceful scenario on my own, where at least I am not hurting anyone or
Yeah,
continuing
I
this
agree. But
situation, right? Because
I
not
agree.
everyone can do that, because this is the hardest thing, because we are sensitive souls and we are the nufus, like we impact each other. And to have people in your own intimate circle where there's this malaise and this kind of like unhappiness and weariness in the home, and you feel like you've done what you can, that is like an adab. It's like a kind of a punishment. And people
Right,
might
but
say, I'm
Allah,
not
but
there.
yeah, but I agree. But Allah could change people's heart. All I'm saying is make sure the process that you're taking to get there, you're doing it God's way, not what society tells you to do or what your ego does. For Allah to change your affairs, you have to change, right? And then you pray to Allah, make it easy, remove this person if he takes me away from you. That prayer, that is wajib on Allah to answer for you. What happens is we're making decisions out of ego, and I'm trying to remove the ego when people make such decisions. Because in a lot of cases, I see regret happen. Because the ones you're talking about is, yeah, that guy marries 10 more women. He's going to be the same way 10 women. One of the biggest pains for women? She divorces a guy, and then he realizes that he screwed up and he changes, and now he's living. And man, it eats the woman. I said, then everything was about your ego, not for Allah. Look, Samaya, imagine this podcast went viral. Millions of people watched it. Millions. It's everything that you wanted. And it changed and transformed. It got people closer to Allah. But there's one difference. Your picture is not there. It got replaced with somebody else using the same words, and they took credit. If your niyyah was pure to get closer to Allah, Allah did what you wanted. But most people's ego, and they have to now think they're fighting for the right. They're nothing. What are you fighting for? You get it? And it's so ego driven, especially living in the West. I say remove the ego, do things Islamically through Tawheed. And if Allah decides a divorce, He will make it easy for you. And Allah says, I will give it and I will take care of your sustenance. But Allah says, if you're getting divorced through your way and your ego, then you're going to have to go through trials. That's all I'm saying. Because it's clear. Like when I meet with somebody, within 5 minutes, I know, okay, this person is an alcoholic, is an abuser. All right, this is what you're gonna do. That way, on day of judgment, he can't hold arguments against you. And trust me, it's gonna be so natural. You naturally part ways. Oh yeah, and then they do it and say, oh yeah, it's so obvious. It was easy. What happens is if you don't see that because of your own ego, because of anger, which destroys your faith, you're not going to see the. Look, I've told kids, I've you notice I could talk. I love the truth and I love talking about it. There was one boy who came to me and I said, you're gonna die. You have bad friends, be careful. And I went to his cemetery. He didn't want to change. And I ended the meeting in like 5 minutes. And it destroyed me. I was gonna give up the work. I said, I wish I could have done more. Why did I do that? Then I realized, no, I was right. This wasn't ready to change. And the father tried everything. And then some other things happened to validate that too. But I even had a nightmare about him. I even warned the father. I said, don't take your eyes off him. But if people don't want to change to get closer to Allah, there's nothing that you could do. But if people do want to change, Allah will change everything for that person. Just make sure you don't allow your ego to keep you away from that opportunity. It's all about Allah, nothing else. Nothing else is going to matter. You're not going to care about your kids when you leave this world. You're going to be saying, nafsi, what's going to happen to me?
I wanted to ask you that if somebody right now is feeling very heavy, what would you advise them to do right now?
They're going through a lot of pain because they found somebody completely hit them with a sledgehammer. The first thing I would do is get them emotionally right. Give them excuses. Okay, they did this because it has nothing to do with me. And if it did have something to do with you, then you have to check yourself, right? Because cheating is a symptom. It's not the problem. What is the reason? Did you do something? In most cases, it comes back to their childhood. It's usually not the woman or the man. In some cases, it is, right? Because of neglect and so on. Then I would get your brain right. It's the first thing. So how do you get the brain right? You wake up in the morning, you meditate, you do a Wim Hof breath, you exercise, you take the right type of supplements. Zafran, just equally as effective as any antidepressant without the side effects. Those are the things that I would do. Get in the best shape of your life, get your mind right, irrespective of what somebody has done to you, because you're not a victim. What happens is when you do that and you elevate yourself and you refocus on Tawheed, then Allah says, okay, you've changed. I'm going to change your affairs. I might remove this person. I might change this person's heart and so on. But I think that's the key, especially if you have kids. Because I don't think there's divorce. You have kids, you're married to that person forever. What are you going to do? How are you going to escape them? It's very difficult. And then you see what happens to the kids. That's why I urge women, just make it last resort. Make sure you've exhausted. And when I say that, they might think it might take 10 years. No, it might take a month where you've exhausted, but you didn't do it through the ego. You did it through your fitrah. That's the key. So it's it's putting your attention on making sure you're the best version of yourself. When you have an egoic love, most relationships are egoic love. Because as soon as that person hurts you, the love is gone, right? In any way. And we validate through them hurting, not knowing that they have a pain body. But one interesting thing about love, when you first fall in love, you don't care about anything. You don't want to eat. Nothing bothers you. You just love life. You're smiling. Say, I'm in love. I think we need to gain that love with the divine first before we fall in love with other human beings. And if you don't know how to love yourself, to love Allah, and you find somebody who filled up your heart through that love and you were dependent on that individual, well, that individual isn't infallible. That person eventually is going to hurt you because he can't help it. And if you have an egoic love and you weren't trained on how to deal with that, then your pain comes out. I love when people find Allah because Allah never betrays you. He'll never hurt you. And when you love Allah, that's why it makes the story of Prophet Yusuf so amazing. His brothers betrayed him. As soon as he threw him in the well, he looked up and says, I forgive you guys. I don't want to mess up your akhirah. How? How does he wish for prison? So in love with Allah. You notice, doesn't blame anybody. He's not being a victim. That's what I'm saying, understanding our traditions. That's where we get our beliefs of why we behave this way. I'm not sharing you my personal beliefs. These are the prophets. You go story after story. That's what I love about Islam. And no other religion has it like we do.